to Vincent, or just make a comment. Est-ce qu'on peut voir, can we see Omega T back again, please?
Yeah.
So this is amazing. As translated, of course, I'm not using cat because, as you see, I'm too old, and thanks God, because I think I would be crazy using cat tools now. When Vincent talked about Omega T for the first time, he talked about that because he did all the documentation on Omega T. And he was asking me, what do you think, what you as a translator? And for the first time ever, I saw exactly what I do, what my brain as a translator does. That is, I start from a source text, and just afterwards I have a target text. The tools that usually that are used monopolistically, as a monopole, as the one that we just noted before. I'm not against SDL and Trados, and I'm not against that. But I do think that this tool was never made by translators for translators. Because you have, on the one side of the screen, you have the source text, and on the other side of the screen, you have the target text. So what do? You do that and that, going from one part to the other. It drives me crazy, really. Look how simple this is. So when Vincent talked about Omega T, he said, this is made by translators for translators. Thanks God. Now, an advice that I gave Omega T and Vincent is to include voice recognition. And that might be, it's going to be very difficult, but that could be really very helpful. And I've been writing an article on that, not only on that. So the tool of the future, the 4.0, would be integrating voice recognition to translate. Maybe if some of you are translators, you might know SpeechNote, which is an open source. You can download it on your computer. SpeechNote is not perfect, but it's not bad. So open source. So I use it now to do my translation for the university. So let's couple that with this type of CAT tools. So this was just my comment about translation. Of course, I couldn't help. Sorry for that. But I'm sure that now discussion time has come. So please join us, the speakers of this afternoon. Fabrizia, please come. Ray and Fanny also. Scott. Fabrizia, where is she? Question time. Well, we need. So let's go for the first question. Second question. Are you tired?
We've rendered them speechless.
Yeah, it
it works. My name is Yvette Aliman. I'm living and working in Switzerland. In the French part of Switzerland, I'm working as a technical writer, as a terminologist, and as a German to French translator. And I'm also a member of the TECOM Switzerland board. And first of all, I would like to thank the speakers for all those interesting talks on so many topics. I loved especially the ones about the listening to the users, the importance of cultural differences in technical writing and Industry 4.0. On one hand, that new term was carried out by Germans and means actually fourth industrial revolution. It comes together with the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence and service learning. On the other hand, the German way of doing technical writing consists mainly of quite rigid application of rules, standards, without taking into account the needs, cultural differences, and different points of view. They know what the user needs and what is good for him and what he has to know. I guess that this is quite far away from service learning and artificial intelligence. And I wonder what's your point of view about that, Ray Golan, for instance, or I don't know.
They're learning. I've mentioned SAP a few times because I think they're actually leading in a lot of different areas, and some of the people in SAP, some of whom are Germans and some of whom are not, because it is a transnational company, are doing some amazing work and are really leading the field in a lot of ways. The German picture is not all monolithic. There are people in Germany who are opening doors and looking at new ways of doing things. Just to talk about one culture, I think there's also a parochialism in other cultures about how we do technical communication as well. We can find it here in France, we can find it in the United States, we can find it in a lot of different places. It's natural. We like to do things in ways that are comfortable for us and for the way that we think and for the way that our culture functions. So it's a normal thing. What's abnormal is to do what we're doing. But on the other hand, it's absolutely necessary because we are in a global universe. And that is, I think, a little bit the point of what I was trying to present, is that what we're being asked to do is maybe not all that natural, but it is absolutely necessary because we can't avoid it. We can't get away from it. The fact that we have various kinds of internets, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 100, are requiring us to think globally in a way that we haven't had to ever before in human history.
Sarah wants to ask a question.
This is for Fanny. I was wondering, and it's probably different for every group, but how long would you say it takes for a team to gel?
It will depend on the team members, but it takes time. I've been working with the same team for about 2.5 years, and I think after 6 months, maybe a year was necessary to really get that energy going through every team member.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
and continuing on that question, is it just your specific team which is organized that way, or is it something which is global in your company? Question behind, of course, is do we see as kind of bottom-up initiative, saying, okay, we see that silos are not performing as great as everybody working as a team? Or do we need that vision and kind of top-down pressure so that it's spread all over the place and everybody in the same company is onboarded and buying to that idea?
Here again, it depends on the team, and I think that what you're talking about, having a vision that is larger than just my team, would help it will help us bring down the last silos, and it will help other teams see what they could take from this approach. And I think each team finds how it works for it, and depending on their management, it's going to work or not, it's going to be possible or not. It's very hard to say. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have magic solutions. I wish I had.
Yeah, what I found interesting is that in all of those talks, you illustrated how hard it is to break down those barriers and how dependent it is on the willingness of people to bring them down. And if there isn't a corporate culture to foster collaboration, then it makes things even more difficult. It's more difficult to break down barriers if the corporate culture isn't encouraging collaboration across silos. But there's hope.
Yeah, I'd like to add something about the issue of top-down or bottom-up, because I think that bottom-up initiatives are extremely important. And I think we all know, especially if you work in a large company, we all know examples of things which happen, as it were, under the radar, they're not official, they're not, but just people just do it, right? And sometimes these initiatives actually get crushed when the hierarchy finds out about it. This is particularly true in countries where you have a very strong hierarchical management culture. We happen to be in one of them. However, speaking about France and the French industry culture, I would say that's true for the old line, large traditional French companies. I know dozens of French startups that function completely differently, that have a completely open and collaborative mentality, and where there's a great spirit of cooperation and collaboration. So, and the other thing that I have to say is, even when you have a very open and flat kind of structure, if you don't have support from the very top, from direction, from the top management, to do this kind of barrier crossing, it's very difficult to accomplish. Even if the top management gives lip service only, it makes it better.
I think you've answered the question I was about to ask Fanny there already, right? Fanny, one of the things you mentioned was this cross-functionally in the team you're in is working well to break down barriers and things, but you weren't seeing it so much in a hierarchical level, so I think Ray has already answered that a little bit, but also interest-based teams, and I wondered if you could talk a bit more about what you mean by that exactly.
Well, it was more interest-based communities, I think. For example, we had a work group form with people from different teams on microservices last year. And this is the kind of topics that can interest anyone from any team. And the hope is that by creating these communities, which can be middle to short term, maybe for a year or just 6 months, just to have people work together, people who are not used to working together, to have this opportunity to interact. That's what I meant.
Okay, hi, Dippo, Jose Coker. It's going back to the, well, industry and, Internet 4.0. And at the same time, you had your snapshot context state snapshot thing, and for the future, you put down temporal, time of day sort of inputs in order to improve this kind of documentation that we produce. But at the same time, we seem to have, or at least there's this move now to sort of avoid the Google, the metadata collection. We need this kind of metadata in order to go towards this future, in order to be able to collect age, sex, themes, what you like and what you don't like, in order for you to then get documentation that is geared towards what you're doing when you're using the software. It's aware of your level of experience, it's aware of your age, how long you've been in the company, and so on and so forth, and maybe your likes and dislikes, so your help comes up at a certain font size and a certain color, on the left, on the right, you're right-handed or you're left-handed. That's all metadata collection. What's your standpoint on metadata collection and this anti-Google? I say Google, but it's basically against every big company that's collecting metadata on us.
You mean from the point of view of privacy?
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
one of the arguments against it.
Here again, these are questions of society. These are not questions just for technical communication. These are society-wide questions, and a lot of this is based on trust. What I find very interesting is if I look at my own kids, when they were teenagers or early teenagers, they didn't care what was being collected on them. We would say to them, be careful, people are storing this data, blah, blah, blah. And they would say, I don't care. Now they're in their 20s, and they care a lot. It's very, very interesting to watch how people evolve on these questions. And what I find really striking is the so-called millennial generation that has grown up with this stuff and is supposedly, not concerned by it, actually have become extremely concerned by it. And what we have is, in parallel with the development of this global economy, we also have people who are demanding that the companies they work for actually do something that has social value. And people almost won't go to work in a company that can't prove that. And there are so many jobs out there in technology anyway that people can pick and choose. If they would rather go to a do no harm company than to an engulf and devour company. So we have this. There is this initiative, and what we're seeing, I think, I'm putting on a political analyst hat here for a moment, which I may or may not have the right to put on, but I think what we're seeing is a conflict between the old industrial model that has been in existence for over 100 years and a new model that's beginning, which, I mean, if I try to be optimistic, I can think is much more positive. It's much more oriented towards sustainable economies, the ecology, and so on, all of those kinds of questions. Now, in order for that to work at a societal level, we have to create a notion of trust. And what's happened is that simultaneously with this movement in this direction, we have less and less trust in the people who actually run countries. So we're in a very, very difficult and conflictive moment. But transition moments are always full of danger, but also full of opportunity. So that's basically the way I look at it. I don't know if that answers your question. But
it wasn't really a question. It was an invitation to discuss.
Yeah.
Again, not a question, but interestingly, from one of the academic technologists, as you were speaking, sent me a message. Have you heard about the guy walking around Britain with an emotion tracker wearable headset? It's at nationalgeographic.com, but basically it goes through all these different communities and different areas. So you're aware, I assume, of this, and any of your thoughts?
Well, why is this person doing it is the question.
Well, it's just it's another version of wearable, and how might that those capabilities and devices be integrated with what we wear?
Well, let's be honest. We already all have emotion trackers, right? I mean, we look at each other's faces.
But one of his, it's very interesting though. One of his points in these write-ups is that what he assumed about his emotions was opposite of what the tracker found. But anyway, which is oftentimes the case. The other device I find interesting is one called Humanize, that is part of, it's like badge, it's just your badge, but it keeps track of how are you interacting and how are you in your meetings and this and that, and it can't, then in those companies pilot testing this, then people, well, the supervisor at the end of the day may say, well, you could have your ideas are really great. You could speak up a little bit more in this meeting, but you maybe need to listen a little bit more in this context and so on. All we know is there, as you said, there's a great deal of change ahead.
Yeah, I'm very suspicious of anything that smacks of Brave New World. That kind of stuff really scares the bejesus out of me. But at the same time, again, it's a question of how are we going to use this stuff? What are we going to do with it? A friend of mine told me a story that she had a doctor who was from India. And so she went to just a normal checkup at some point, and she asked the doctor, what do you think about genetic engineering? And this doctor said, I come from a country that has a god that's a boy with the head of an elephant. And that was an interesting response, in my view.
I actually also have a question for you. At the beginning of your talk, you have shown a figure with the learning process, showing that it's not a linear learning process, but that in fact we select what we want to learn, so it's not straight. So my question was, do you think with the artificial intelligence is gonna change the learning process? Because I don't know much about this topic, and it gives me always the idea that we are becoming more and more passive in what we choose to learn.
No, I don't think so. In fact, I think just the opposite. What I think the trick is going to be is for us to learn not to try and be bad bots, because the bots will always do it better than we do, right? So the trick is to see what is our added value as humans? What can we do that they can't do? What do we do better than they do? And my answer to that, at least for the moment, is to be creative and to face the unexpected. Those are things that, so far anyway, artificial intelligence is still not all that skilled at. Maybe one day it will be, but for the moment, it's not there, and we are. And it needs us, and we need it, so that we don't have to worry about all that stuff that bots can do better than we do. We're still, I don't know about you, but my day is spent doing all kind of administrative things that, I've got better things to do with my brain, frankly.
At the same time, you are presented with a certain type of information because of profiling and because we're using all the metadata that we have collected. Someone or something thinks that you may like this one. So you will be presenting with something which is becoming more and more standard. So what will be then our ability to go sideways and benefit from another point of view?
I think we need a surprise me button. And I come from, before I got into this business, I used to work in radio. And in radio, people take surveys. And the survey, or what's known in France as audimètre, the surveys tell you what didn't work as well as some other things. So what you do is you're constantly eliminating and eliminating and eliminating. The surveys never tell you what would happen if you tried such and such, right? And that's what we need. That's what humans can do. That's what humans do better than anything. What would happen if we try to do this? What would happen if we experiment? What if we play? And that, I want to be careful about sort of promoting techno-utopias, because although at times I have believed in them, I've gotten cynical enough in my old age to think humans, if there's a bad way we can go, we probably will. Sort of another version of Murphy's Law. But I do think that this potential is there.
I'm just thinking, because Vincent was talking about being vulnerable or admitting that we can't do everything. That might be something that bots can't do. They can't admit that they have flaws, while humans can, and that there's a more strength in the collective.
Mary, can you tell us about the article that you sent me about creativity and technical writers?
Yes. So it's a website, US News and Reports. They've done a study on the most popular jobs, and technical writer is number 3 in the best creative and media jobs.
We will put the link to that article, because I'm sure you're very interested in that. In another idea also, I've been reading quite a lot on deep learning, facial recognition, and our big experts saying that now we can recognize faces. It's not true completely. And because we can do deep learning, more and more facial recognition, we will not need translators anymore, because translator will be a push button activity. Well, I hope to be dead when I see that from up. And I'm sure that those predictions that are launched like that, because you can do anything with deep learning. How brain, we never know, we don't know still now how we understand a text. If we read a text, we don't know how we do to understand it. If we read a text in another language that we master, we don't know what is putting into action to understand a text in a foreign language. So don't tell me a button will translate your text, please, because we have to think, and this creativity that we can see in technical communication, when you design something, you try to adapt it to the better, the best way possible to an audience. You try to make them play, you're trying to be attractive, you try to do anything using tools, being creative with tools also, because the job has to be done. So this creativity is done for the moment by our brains and by nothing else than our brains. Okay, so I'm very, very positive about the future of technical writing and of course the future of translation, because this was my former job and I teach translation, of course. And I think that collaboration is really the very important word of today. And I don't want to make you think I'm ending the discussion, because we have a quarter of an hour now. We have 15 minutes left. But please go on with those perspectives and take the floor if you want.
Hello. What do you think about public companies for breaking silos? The way they work, the way they are organized. And I think it's a good example of breaking silos. For example, at the SNCF, every 3-4 years you have to change position. You get many other skills. at the end you are aware of what the other people do because you have done it. So what do you think about how they work in public institutions?
Please explain to our American speakers what is SNCF, please.
I think they know, no? It's the National Railroad Company.
Which is public.
Yeah.
Our trains are public. So who answers that question?
So the question is about public service or organizations in general?
In public service.
In public service.
I don't have to change jobs every 3 years. I can take
I can
mine.
understand that, yes.
So it makes me think of a book I read recently called Reinventing Organizations by Frédéric Laloux. And it's about how there are different types of organizations, even for NGOs or public service or corporate. And there are more collaborative ways of setting up an organization. And one of them entails that people can have different jobs, as Fanny was describing, that you don't have to be defined by your job role, and you can change as you see fit. And so I'm not sure there's anything specific to public service. It's really in the nature of the organization, and it can be an NGO, a corporate, a startup, whatever. It really depends on the willingness of that organization to function in a collaborative way.
Yes, but it's the best example.
Well, there's also General Electric, who more or less invented that system.
I don't think it's specific to kind of public organization. We do find the same thing in companies, and GE is a good example, but I'm working in another good example where a lot of people are moving can be ranging from 2 years to 5 years, and your change job, which means that teams are very different over time. So working, like Fanny was explaining, as agile setup would make it very difficult. So you gain some positive aspect by doing that, because you broaden your experience and you get a better understanding of who is doing what, helping the organization to move on. But you are also kind of losing what you would get in an agile organization like the one from Fanny. So I think it's good to have different models. You get a feeling of what would work best for you, and you can also change of company, moving from one to another, and then you will get a different organization. Not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, with regard to public service companies, I've spent about half my career in nonprofit and public sector, and half of it in the private sector. And I have come to the conclusion that they're exactly the same. Some of the motivations are different. Obviously, the profit motive, I can't say it's absent from the public sector, but it's certainly not as strong in the public sector as it is in the private sector. But everybody that I've ever worked with in any organization has always just wanted to do a good job at what they do. That's the bottom line. And the other conclusion that I came to is there is no such thing as a well-run organization. The best you can hope for is the part you're in is well-run, and failing that, they leave you alone to do your job.
Yeah, I'm thinking there are examples of radical collaboration in the military, which is the area where you would least expect it, because there's this notion that there's a very hierarchical structure, but in people working in nuclear submarines will make decisions in a collaborative way when there's an emergency, because that's, you know, when you have to face the unexpected, you have to work this way. So I wouldn't equate a way of working with the type of organization.
Another question? I think you're tired. So I would.
Wants to have the pool now.
So I do want to thank you all for being here to show us that technical writing matters a lot. I particularly thank those that crossed the ocean to come here, and with great energy. And I would like you to join us here on the floor. Please come, so we can make a nice picture and put on our site, and so we can remember this nice day. Students, ex-students, professionals, tutors,
Students.
teachers, of course. I wanted them to be the last one. It's a great pleasure to see you and to exchange with you, to see that what Mary chose as a topic today for crossing silos was really a topic that you were very aware of, that is important also. Please come and sit. And so we'll make a nice picture. Now we'll have le pot des diplômés, and I hope a lot of people are coming over and enjoy with us. And thank you very much for being here. It was, I think, a wonderful day, and I've learned a lot. And surely you've learned a lot too. And thank you very much for being here. Please. Now, please come. Patrick, est-ce que vous pouvez faire une photo de nous tous, ou est-ce qu'il faut qu'on utilise quelque chose pour faire la photo? So Patrick is going to make a picture, I think.
Est-ce qu'on peut lui demander d'éteindre le projecteur aussi? T'as la moitié de ta visage qui va avoir...
Oh, we can
Line up in tight order.
No, because I wanted to have that.
Oh, d'accord.
Vous êtes parti un peu vite là.
Non, on va se mettre là devant.
Alors mettez-vous devant, ok.
Merci beaucoup à Patrick aussi. Merci pour votre aide. C'est super génial de vous avoir et vraiment ça roule tout le temps. Et merci beaucoup à vous.